It's September 11th, 2023. As I sit here in my quiet and I reflect on what's taken place, I'm in this, I'm in New York in an area that also has this Excelsior flag. Again, I did a piece this morning with the artwork my grandfather left behind, or two pieces of it with his photo. I made some discoveries this week. In an Io Me Io. The Community TV show has this actor, Mikhail. I read a small piece on his bio. Again, I'm really careful with like not upsetting the mighty eagle. I definitely don't want to like throw off the wrong vibe at the Great Thanksgiving. And then there's, of course, somewhere in the world, I always feel like there's an angry bird and like a Cornish hen, and I just feel like the chickens get a little abused at times or overlooked. I mean, like, if the Great Thanksgiving bird and the mighty eagle want to know, I mean, it's just from where this has gone, somewhere between, this is what this month's People magazine looks like. I got this out of the local library. This is a personalized aerospace journey for me. Like, if I was born with a post-it note on my driving abstract, it says Glenn and it has the number 3. I can't get away from that in this America. So, just so Io Me Io knows, my son came over, one of my one of my B series of whatever, visited me last night in this area. And he shows up and he is wearing signs of the times. He's wearing Star Wars. And he's got Brady's other number on it. Brother Brady. And like, that's a really important administrative name in the Reagan era. It's utmost importance. And they have really, I mean, I know in his football career, he's important. This week they put on that now he's a strategic advisor for Delta, which before his hire, it is reporting that they had no regulations, which is really frightening. So Daniel comes over and he's got on this Star Wars and he's got on Brady's ear. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. He tells me it's football's opening night. And I'm like, and you're wearing Brady's Star Wars number. That's just, wow. And he goes, really? He goes, I didn't know that's. I'm like, yeah, no, it is. I was like, what year was I born? And he's like, I'm like, right, yeah, no, I know, things I don't talk of. I was like, all right, so we sat down, and there's like this homage to Brady, no idea why, but the things that I missed along his journey, they did a really nice job at his organization with the NFL yesterday. I also saw this morning on Space Force, they had Chinese delegation. They made mention in the fiction of Space Force in the United States, agreed aerospace program. They did this really interesting tussle in the aerospace Space Force hypothesis, that I'm not going to go into details, but Brady's name was mentioned in there. Again, I don't really watch sports. Has not been part of my lifestyle. And the one football game that the Armenian brought me to was definitely not one of Brady's former or whatever team. It was a derby game. Anyhow, so I made a discovery. I mean, like, I went out to look for the American armor with one of my B series of children. Again, I come from an AIDI, born AIGH, but with this other piece in the series that we're in HCGH. And for this and the general of most importance, that the only one I've ever known of is General George Washington in this federal note system with the United States of America being like the number one in this particular category with these symbols that the theater put on for this area while I'm living in these conditions. So there's that. And so I found American armor that I could go visit. Apparently, when they were making the announcement of Brady and the Delta, they had him coming off of, like, well, I'm going to look for American armor. He's working Under Armour, coming off of that plane. And then when they did the homage to Brady, while my son was there, I taped it just so I could go back to it. Because I missed his entire career and the significant points of his importance, but I did not realize, like, he was bound patriot, and that seems like, if io me io, that seems incredibly important. Plus, of course, cosmologically and, like, astrologic terms of significance, if, like, the galaxy breaks or if space and time warps the wrong way. And I have a Wednesday child myself. I might be an important little sister somewhere in the galaxy for how do we fix climate change and global warming. I might be significant. So anyhow, biological clocks and going from an AIGH, having an AIII, an II, and then going into the B series, and to be or not to be, it's a cell. It's like, whatever. So that's important. And so I'm gonna go on. So my son comes over yesterday. Otherwise, I wouldn't have even known football. It was opening day yesterday. I also, it seems like that football thing and Star Trek, they had on this Jerry O'Connell guy, and he's, I guess, like the spokesperson for Star Trek. And I was watching him, and I'm like, wow, he really does look a little like King Charles III. You know, that's really interesting lining of events. So anyhow, I watched the opening of that. Like, it was a half an hour thing. I'm not a big Star Trek fan at all. But I fast forwarded through most of it because it hurts to watch. It just hurts to watch being in this, whatever this is. So I'm gonna pause this and show they put Brady in this Under Armour position. It seems to go with some of his career, which seems really important. I'm going to pause this for a second, go into the other room. All right, so on News Nation, on like the Verizon, I mean, this is like the Fios box thing. This is Leland Vittert, News Nation. It says here, when it's too hot to board, Americans are at 90 degrees, JetBlue is at 85 degrees, and no regulations on Southwest, Delta, or United. I'm like, and it says just plain stinks. I'm like, wow, those are some, that's like the GOD just, I mean, like, ooh, hello, big, it's almost like being on a highway to nowhere in the desert, and all of a sudden the car malfunctions, and you get out of the car and you realize, I don't know any mechanics. I don't know how to, I wasn't trained to recognize, like, I can recognize the signs, but I don't know how to fix the engine myself. And I'm in this desert on this highway, and there's just not a soul in sight. I mean, whew.
To run the air conditioning. Same thing for Southwest and United. The cabin has to be a stifling 90 degrees before American deems it too hot to board, 85 degrees for JetBlue. The airlines union is demanding that all change. They want the government to intervene. They want, quote, acceptable temperature ranges for plane cabins and to require airlines to run the air conditioners. Shocking that they need the government to tell airlines to keep it less than 90 degrees. There are some other issues recently on planes involving bodily functions overflowing on seats and in aisles. We'll spare you the details of those. But fair to say, the FAA still places very little emphasis on the basics of passenger rights. Bill McGee is here, Senior Fellow for Aviation at the American Economic Liberties Project. Bill, I guess we start at the beginning. This really all comes down to money, right? That the airlines, they have air conditioners and they've got jet engines to run air conditioners when we're all on the planes, but it's expensive and they'd rather not.
Well, I think you summed it up pretty well. Yes. I mean, the fact is that when we're talking about temperatures that are in the high 80s and 90s and even triple digits, as we've seen recently, that's simply unacceptable.
Yeah, we heard all the time from Secretary Buttigieg about all the things he's going to do for passengers. There's this website basically tells you, whether or not you have to pay to check a bag and if you can sit next to your family member or something. But as I think about what's happening here, there's two competing interests right now, because the airlines love saying, and I guess Buttigieg is a way of giving an excuse here, because the airlines love to say, hey, look, we don't want to run the engines or both engines when we're on the ground or the auxiliary power unit because it burns more fossil fuels. We're just trying to be carbon neutral, protect the environment here. The airlines get to hide behind that, save money. And interestingly enough, when it got to be 100 degrees on a Delta flight for 3 hours, Buttigieg didn't come out and say it could mandate it pretty easily. You got to run air conditioners.
Well, the bottom line is, again, we need to have some standards here. There has to be a policy. I mean, I've found this time and again. If you request that the airlines do something, if you ask that the airlines do something, they're simply not going to do it. Not individually and not as an industry. And so it's going to be incumbent on DOT, as I said, to set some standards.
You don't sound hopeful.
No, I am.
And now, like, when I went to this American Air Power Museum in the local area, in the display case, they had this airline I had never heard of called Eastern. And now they have up here something called United, and they fly something called Southwest. Now, that seems really crucial of a detail. I just don't know what it really means. But there's been like a whole lot of changes. So
I am more hopeful than I was this time last year, I'll tell you. Look, I've been very critical of Secretary Buttigieg in the past. In recent months, he's taken some steps that have impressed me, quite frankly. One thing he did was come out against the Spirit JetBlue merger. That's without precedent. We haven't had a DOT secretary ever come out against any merger. And I would argue at length, that consolidation within the industry is one of the biggest problems here. It's sort of one of the original sins.
No argument.
And let's just fast forward. Oh, there's Brady.
Live this in a different way and to join a different.
Airlines has a new person to help with all of this, and is evidently going to make flying better for all of us. Somebody who does not fly commercial very often. Tom Brady is going to now help. You can see him there getting on and off some of the multiple private jets, including the Patriots private jet.
And see, it says Under Armour. And then in the local area, I took my son to go visit the American Armour. These symbolic words seem rather important, but he got signed and bound as something called an American Patriot for Io Mio. I don't know how they choose certain stars in the galaxy in order to raise up to these heights.
He's on MSNBC talking. Take a listen.
A lot of that teamwork comes from, I always believe it always starts at the top. And I've been part of organizations that have great leadership, that give great information to the people, that can inspire the athletes to maximize their opportunity and their potential. So I think, for me to live this in a different way and to join a different team is really fun for me.
That is really wonderful for him. I have not had the same life experience. For me, life has been very different. In fact, even being an HCGH and an AIGH for my class, rather than going into the new millennia and planting and gardening in a more classical way. I just feel like it's been mass casual. I don't know why. I don't know what the change was. I've gotten into corporate positions at a very low level. Almost it feels like punishment because you have to work so hard. There's no room for growth in the organization. And it's just like all the doors closed. No idea why. And especially when the respectable partnership, I don't know where it went. I don't.
I mean, does Delta think we're all a bunch of fools?
If this was another era in the industry, I might make a joke and roll my eyes and say, "Oh well, okay, fine. A football quarterback is going to help steer an airline." The fact is, I'm really quite angry about it. I have to be honest with you. I've been around this industry for 38 years. I worked in the airlines. I've written about the airlines. I've advocated for competition and consumers for decades now, since 1985. And we are in an awful state with this industry. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know.
Yeah.
Customer service is at an all-time low. Is that my opinion? No, that's not the one he's speaking. That's the DOT's own statistics on consumer complaints, delays, cancellations. The big four airlines in this country have an oligopoly: American, Delta, United, and Southwest, and they act like an oligopoly. They act in lockstep on fares when they compete with each other, and their customer service has never been at a lower level. The idea that we're going to go out, I have nothing against Mr. Brady personally, but the idea that we're going to go out and we're going to get a quarterback, to speak in corporatese about teamwork and leadership and winning. Look, we know he's a fantastic quarterback and he's won more Super Bowls than any other quarterback. What does that have to do with running an airline? This is a complex industry, and we need real experts to turn it around. And as I said, I mean, at another time it might have been fire for a cartoon.
That might be kind of funny.
Yeah, look, at this point, it's not.
Yeah. Well, it's insulting to all of us who sit there through the delays and everything else, and somehow we're made to feel better because Tom Brady has told us that flying Delta's a good thing. All right, Bill, it was good chatting. I really appreciate it, and it's always nice to hear somebody who was once a critic who's willing to come out.
Yeah, except our aerospace program had 7. I think Tom Brady won 7 Super Bowls is the only stat I know about him. So I'm going to go back to what my son with his Star Wars t-shirt 1977, because that's what they're selling in the local stores, wearing Brady's number, whether they know or not. I mean, he just showed up wearing it, and I just happened to know. that Brady's an AIGG. So I'm going to pause this for a second and go to what the opening little piece was, because this is the only part that I know about him without having to go to the library and read a child's book on him, which seems kind of ridiculous considering that we're the same age and going into the new millennia with children. He just got to this like whole other level, soared on eagle's wings, while I'm in a different set of circumstances. But home team is supposed to look the same, so it gets really confusing in how they lifted or just cast out. And under this Excelsior flag, it does have the letters CEL in it. And I'm having trouble with like air pressurization and fluid with specific and relative gravity and cellular transport at a molecular biological way. So I'm going to pause this for a second. So under the conscript that perhaps there's script out in the author of this area, it says the Eagles begin their quest for a return trip to the Super Bowl by visiting a former foe with the Patriots. I guess they think Brady's a traitor. Is that what former foe means? I don't really know. New England added former Dallas running Ezekiel Elliott on a one-year deal to support Mac Jones. Philadelphia went 14-3 last season on September 10th. I really don't know what any of that means. I haven't been following their fiction, although they do have 8 stars up there. They have 2 sets of 4, so at like quattro, cat, via, and 4, it seems significant. But this is what they put up last night. This is the teaching aid tool that they used. And with my son as like the moving billboard to remind me when I saw this come on, because I thought it was just opening night. I was like, what does opening night look like? He's like, come on, and so he put it on. My mom was there.
Don't just watch the game. Download Caesars Sportsbook and experience the game like never before. Weekend is presented by YouTube TV, the new home of NFL Sunday Ticket. Sign up now.
Game day dip in the oven? Just tell Siri. Remind me to check the food in 10 minutes.
Tom Brady, the second-year quarterback from the University of Michigan. And Brady in charge. Brady threw this ball perfectly. The Super Bowl MVP. There's no one that's done what he's done. It's unbelievable. He's the greatest. And the Patriots.
The crowd just went delirious here at halftime for their man Tom Brady. Welcome back to NFL Kickoff, presented by YouTube TV. The Kraft family announcing that next summer they'll waive all the 5-year limitations before you can go into the Patriot Hall of Fame. And next 6/12/24, the 6th June, representing the 6 championships, the 12 for Brady, and the summer of 24, they will be back here inside Gillette Stadium to honor him completely. After this was just an appreciation day, and what an outpouring it was.
Yeah, just an appreciation day for a guy who, like, was in the Hall of Fame. He should have been the one guy who was in the Hall of Fame while he's still playing football. And then to do this, it's like, well, you haven't even skipped a game yet. I thought they were going to do, like, the ceremony where they retire his jersey, and I was like, no one's ever had that. He just keeps breaking every record, and he deserves it. This guy changed this organization forever, the way they're perceived, and what the standard of excellence is, and I think it's just an honor. And these fans, they love him. He has a home here for life, I think, right?
I'm sure he does anytime he wants. That was an amazing speech, Tracy. And down to you and Tom Brady. Here we go, live.
Thank you.
Oh, it's a reference from Tracy. Of course it is. Oh, these Thunderbirds, they are real. I just, they had a puppet thing over here I found by accident that I was watching. But I mean, sometimes the fiction on TV, even as much as my Spirit of St. Louis and my Louis tells me they're just moving pictures, Nicole, don't get upset about it. Like, it's not that big of a deal. And I'm like, right, yeah, no, not okay. But it seems like for some, it is a very big deal.
Hey, Jim, it is basically, it's like Super Bowl all over again, trying to get you.
I haven't put this on in a while, but it feels pretty good, I'll tell you that.
I'm sure it does. Your smile so wide. I can see how emotional it is. What does this ceremony mean to you?
It means a lot. I had 20 amazing years here, and then got 3 really fun years in Tampa, gained a lot of perspective, and there's no better place for me to be on opening day in the NFL than to be here with these fans, and so many people came to support it, so I'm very blessed, and I'm glad that we got a game, and I'm glad Jim and Tony got a fun one to call. You're probably a little worried early, Tony, which we talked about, but I want to thank you, all my fans out there that aren't here, but all the ones in New England that supported us, and I'm so grateful for their support. Sorry, that camera, and for the love they've given me. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Speaking of the game, you're up there watching. What's it like watching from up there for the first time on opening day, not being a part of it?
Well, it's not as fun as playing, I'm sure of that. But I'm so happy to kind of put that part of my life to bed and move on to other things. So I'm cheering on a couple of my favorite teams. And, I love seeing this big competitive game. They're playing against a good Eagle team, and it's going to be a great second half.
Thanks so much. Congratulations.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Great to hear from Tom. Thank you, Tracy. As we get set for the second half with the Patriots receiving the kick, Tom Brady going into the Patriot Hall of Fame in 24. The deadlock cinch into Canton in the summer of 28.
Yeah, I'm telling you right there, you can see his appreciation, the appreciation of the fans, the community and everything for what he's done, the commitment he made to this organization. Remember what he told us? Robert Kraft, when he came in, I'll be the best draft pick you ever made. And boy, he was not kidding.
Yeah, he made draft selection 199. Pretty famous, that's for sure. Let's get back to this now. You got a 16-14 lead for the Eagles as the Patriots, though, dominated that second quarter. Mac Jones never looked sharper than he did in that 15 minutes of action.
Well,
So that's what's going on in a sports category. But I found it really interesting when I was in my quiet this morning watching, going between the I Love Jeff at Joel McHale's starring role. I did not catch him. I actually, when I looked him up, I did not realize his career began at The Soup, which is a really symbolic Seinfeld, whatever. But at Io Me Io, and like The God and the G-O-D and flowers that have an AID component and going into an AIG component, which would then lead us into the new millennium. It is a really important piece amongst humanity on this Earth ship. So, not that some of us feel that we've been whatever, but we feel like we've been forgotten about. But even in the word forgotten, there is the goot, the G-O-T-T. But I am in a G-O-D system, so I dare not. I mean, again, I hear West Point uses the Thaddeus route of D-E-U-S, but when they opened that lead, it was empty. What a surprise. Anyhow, so Space Force did mention Brady, which was important. It just, like, it's one of those things where, like, the universe is just, like, tying and threading some fiction together and, like, going, like, here you go. Like, I know he's from your area of the universe, the solar system, and the galaxy, and that weird way of flagging down like whatever. But this is like what sunlight looks like in the year 2023. So that would be like a BOB, or would it just be BBC? Actually, I guess this is sunlight in the BBC. I mean, in the B series of millennia. I mean, I have seeds here. I was a special flower with special fruit, and that works within the monetary system for what we have going on here. And yet this sunlight just seems extremely, I don't know the scientific words to describe it, but it's alarming, to say the least. They had on a Star Trek, ties of blood and water between this daughter. Normally she's known as Kira, but then they call her Arissa. And there's this person with like the Ankh on his head. And that had really important symbolic meaning, like if the world stood still type of a thing. And whatever that means, that's a specific reference for nobody that exists in this reality with the sunlight. That is whatever. I think that's more special task force Mark. But whatever on that, whatever that means. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza, it's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken, and it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.